Good morning. We're learning as Chus Refuah Shlema, Filan Chai Basarach. We're on the Mishnah on Yud Gimel Amid Beis. Another machlekes. Shachat shnei kvasim lechel achas menachalis lamacha. This is talking about the kipsei atzeres. On, just to clarify, not that this is really relevant, but as you know, on the second day of Pesach, they would bring the Omer. And the Omer would allow everyone to eat the chadash. They could eat from the new grains. But they were still not allowed to bring karbanis from the new grain. The mincha couldn't be brought from the new grain until you bring the kifsei atzeres on Shavuos, which is obviously 49 days later, 50 days later. We know, right? The second day of Pesach, he starts Sfira, and then Shavuos is 50 days later. So this kifsei atzeres consisted of two lambs that were brought as karbanis on the mizbeach. They were, I think, shlamim, and then 2 loaves of bread that were brought. So this is what's going to be the problem. He shechted the 2 kvasim, but he had in mind when he shechted the 2 kvasim to eat one of the chalos the next day. So he only had in mind, he didn't have in mind both of the chalos. He only had in mind one of the chalos. Or alternatively, hikter shnei bezichen. This is talking about by the lechem hapanim on Shabbos, right? You had the 2 sedarim of chalos on the shulchan, which had on top of it each one of the sedarim, each of the arrangements of challah had a bazich, one of the bazichen, one of these spoons or containers or kalim full of levina on top of it, and they would take that levina and go burn it, and that was the avodah that was matir, the lechem hapanim, to be eaten by the kohanim. And so he was maktir one of those bazichen, or both of the bazichen, lechel echad min astarim, to eat one of the 2 arrangements of chalas, right? This one bazach on top of each one of the starim, right? The shulchan was a line that had lined up 6 on each side. So he only had in mind to eat from one of those sedarim. Rabbi Yossi Aimer, oisa achala v'oisa seder shechisel of pigel v'chayven of karis. The one that he was having a machshava to eat it at chutz lezman, that one that he was thinking about, that's the one that's going to have a chiv karis if he eats it. V'ashreini pasol v'ein by karis. But the second challah from the kifsei atzeres, or the second seder of chalas from the lechem hapanim, is going to be pasol because he pasoled the hakrava, but there's not going to be a chiv karis on it. It's not going to be considered to be pigel that you chayiv karis for eating it. The Chacham say no. Once you had a machshavas pigel on half of it, it goes on the whole thing. It's going to make the entire lechem, either the chalos or the sedarim. Both cases talking about chalas, but either the other challah of the kifsei atzeres or the other chalos of the lechem hapanim are also going to be a chiyav pigel if he eats them. If he has in mind that the other one's going to be in chutz l'zmana, if he eats any of them, he's going to chayav karas for pigel. And so Rabbi Yossi is saying the isser of eating pigel only applies to the thing that you had machshava on in this case. The Chum disagree. It says it will apply to the entire carbon, the entire hakrava. Amar Rav Huna.
I just want to clarify. So the chorus kicks in when he actually eats the bread, or
right? That's
he
always
doesn't eat the bread.
with
There's no
pigel.
chorus.
It's not from doing the maisa of pigel, of having the machshava and then bring makar of the carbon. It comes from eating it. That's where there's a chi of karas. Amar Rav Huna. Rav Huna extends the shita of Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says that sort of it's nispashet. The chi of karas it applies to the entire thing that he had the entire matir that he had the entire thing that became mutter through the machshavas pigel, or that he was being makriv, to be matir. Arvuna Omer Rabbi Yosi pigel be yerach shel yamin. Similar thing. If a person brings a carbon, he shechts a carbon, and he has in mind that he's going to eat the basar chutz luzmani, and he's thought about, I'm going to make myself a steak from the right leg of this animal. Obviously, it's not like today where we're not able to eat the yerech because of we're chayshish for gid hanasha. We don't know how to take it out. But he had in mind he's going to eat the yerech shel yamin. Loy nispagal ha yerech shel smoil. He says Rabbi Yosi would say, just like he said by the chalis, that it doesn't apply to the chal he wasn't thinking about. If he had in mind bedavka to eat from the yerech shel yamin, the other yerech, the other thigh, the left thigh will not become. If he eats that, he won't be chayiv kars. My time. What's the reason? eBay say mesvara, eBay say makra. You could either say it's a svara or it's a pasuk. eBay say mesvara. Over here, we're talking about answering something with a machshava, and we know that with a maisa, we separate the two sides. Ilu itmi chad ever mi itmi lekule. If you were to have a left leg and a right leg of kachim. Now, it's a little tricky because it's talking about here after they're separated, and we're talking about having the machshava before they're separated. So the Mefarshim address that. It's a difficult problem. But this is the svara. He says if you're metama one of the two thighs, the other one doesn't become tameh because you touch to one of them. Unless they're touching, they're not going to be metama one another. So therefore, if we say that two separate things, if you say two separate things don't become tameh, certainly having a machshava of chutz lizmanai is not going to make the two limbs, both of them, become isser. It'll only be isser karas on the one that you had the machshava about. You might say makra. Mimenu v'lei mechaveroi. You dash in the pasuk. The Torah says only from this one and not from the other one. Just got the notification from my son's yeshiva that they're canceling Shachris. Like at 7:40, Shachris was at 8. And they're going to send us another notification about whether yeshiva is canceled. It still hasn't come yet. Yeshiva is supposed to be at 9:30. They can't make a decision.
Well, I guess so they're on premises. I mean, right? Well,
No. You have to travel. My son he normally has a half-hour trip to get to yeshiva.
Oh,
He's staying by my daughter, who lives like a 10-minute walk away, so he can make it if there's yeshiva. So we did everything right, so he can make it there, but they won't tell us if there's yeshiva. They would have told us yesterday, we wouldn't have sent them to their daughter. Eisvei Rav Nachman LeRav Huna. Rav Nachman, we're going to have a series of questions. Good morning, Menachem. Rabbi Yosi had said in the Mishnah, we're on the bottom of Yud Gimel Amid Beis. Rabbi Yosi had said in the Mishnah that when you have a machshavas pigel on the two kifs, about one of the chalas of the kifsei atzeres, if you eat the second chala of the kifsei atzeres, you're not going to be chayiv karas. And similarly, but lechem aponim, if you have a machshavas pigel to eat the lechem aponim, one of them chutz lizmanai, one of the starim, it won't apply to the other arrangement, the other 6. And Rav Huna had applied that as well. If someone has a machshavas pigel about 2 pieces of basar, about 1 piece of basar out of 2, meaning one thigh and not the other, he'll only be chayiv karas if he eats that one that he had a machshava that he's going to eat a chutz lizman. Eisvei Rav Nachman LeRav Huna. Rav Nachman asked on Rav Huna that he's saying that this will apply as well to the 2 limbs. La'olam ein by karas ad she yifagel b'shtei. Now, this is a this Bryce is talking about again the shtei halechem, and it's saying he's not going to have a chi of karas until he has a pigul on both of them. Because Zayis, of course, actually fagel b'shtein. No one is going to if you're going to have a machshavas pigul on one of the two shtei halechem, the other one is not going to be pigul. Only if he has in mind from both of them until he's mefagel in both of them. So kazayis b'shteihem in. It's only if he had a machshava of a kazayis on both of them, on both of the chalas. Then there's going to be a din pigul that is in chayiv kares for eating either. But if he has a machshavas pigul in one of them, he won't. Money. Who is this like? Rabbanan, if it's like the Rabbanan of our Mishnah, Nami. According to Rabbanan, it doesn't make a difference. You don't have to have a machshava in both of them. You can have a machshava in one of them. Ela pshita Rabbi Yosi. Elamai talking about Rabbi Yosi. And it's talking about where he had a machshavas pigul of one kazayas between the two chalis. So iyam b'shlam achad gufa who, if Rabbi Yosi would hold that you say a behema is considered a single guf. So when you think about one yerech, it's going to also apply to the second yerech. So then you could understand why having one kazayis between the two chalis would be enough to make them to make him be chayiv on both of them. If you're saying that the two pieces of the yerach, the two yerachim are treated as two separate things, how can you say mitzdarfi? How could you say that the two you're going to use one kazayis between the two chalas? That's going to be enough to make them pigul. Right? That you're going to say that both of them are going to be chayiv because you had them both in mind, but they're not even attached like the two yerachim are, the two pieces of meat. So how would Rabbi Yosi say that they should be combined because he has in mind to have a kazayis from the two of them? And for the Gemara, no, that's not a shaila. That din over there, that brisa is not. It's a different shita. Hamani Rebbe. This is going into Rebbe the Tanya. Hashoichel es hakeves lechel kazayis michalazu v'chein chaveroi lechel chatzi zayis michalazu. If someone shechted, again, we're talking about the kivsei atzeres. There are two kvasim, there are two lambs that are brought to be matir the two chalis, and he shechted one of the kvasim, having a mind to eat a chatzi zayis from one challah. And then he ate the second keves, but I'm sorry, didn't eat the second keves. He shechted the second keves, having in mind to eat a chatzi zayis of the second challah. Rebbe Omer Anisha zeh kosher. Rebbe says that this is entirely kosher. You should note the fact, he's not saying that it's just not, he's not going to be chayv kares. He's saying it's going to be entirely kosher. It's going to be, that means this is not going to be possible at all. So the reason is only because he only intended to eat, the reason why it's kosher is because he was going to eat a chatzi zayis from each one. Aval amar kazayis mishtayin. If he says I'm going to take a chatzi zayis from, if he said a chatzi zayis from each of the two chalis, which would put together the two chalis, it would be mitzdaref. So the brisa that said before that you're not going to have a, it's not going to be pigul when you have in mind a chatzi zayis from each one. You have to have a machshava in both of them. That's going to be that's gonna be like Rebbe. Rebbe says you could have a chatzi zayis from each one, and that will be mitzdarf, like we're medayik from here. If you amr kazayis mishteim, will be mitzdarf. But Rabbi Yossi Einachanami says you have to have a separate zayis in each one, because that's going with Rabbi Yossi's shita, that we say that by the two yerachim they're treated as two separate things. That means we're saying that Rebbe will hold that it's fully two it's I'm sorry, that according to Rebbe, that it's going to be considered really one thing, but you have to have a full kazayis between the two of them. According to Rabbi Yossi, no, it's although it's considered to be one, that if you have in mind a kazayis from each one, you're going to be chayiv. But if you would have taka only a chatzi zayis, since Rabbi Yossi we know says that you treat the two yerachim, the two thighs, as separate, he would say that this is also going to be separate, that you need to have a full kazayis on each one. So the Gemara, you haven't really helped us, because Rabbi Ali b'daman, who is Rabbi going to hold like in this machlokes? You're trying to say Rabbi, it's going like Rabbi. The Gemara in this sugya for some reason is saying that Rabbi has to hold like either Rabbi Yossi or the Rabbanan. It means, I don't know, for some reason we're not assuming Rabbi could have his own shita. Rabbi Ali b'daman, Ali b'derabbanon. If he holds like the Rabbanan, that when you eat if you have a machshava on one part of the thing that's going to be mutter, that spreads in the whole thing, then you wouldn't need at all to have a machshava on the second challah. And if you're saying it's going like he holds like Rabbi Yossi, then we have the same problem. We said that Rabbi Yossi, it wouldn't make any sense according to Rabbi Yossi why, if you're looking at them at the two yerachim as separate, it wouldn't be enough to have just a chatzi zayis from each challah. Rabbi Taka holds like the Rabbanan. I'm sorry. Actually, we should say the brisa. We're not saying Rabbi. We're saying the brisa that we asked on Rabbi Yossi. That we said, according to Rabbi Yossi, we don't understand how when you have a machshava on a chatzi zayis, that should be enough to spread on each one of the chalas, so it should make both of them chayiv if you eat them chutz l'zmanim. Don't say that it's talking about where you need that he should have a machshavas pigel on both the chalas. On the both of the kifs kvasim, right? There are two kvasim as well as two chalas. And what the Braizu was saying, not that you have to have a machshavas pigel on both of the chalas, but rather he has to have a machshavas pigel when he shechs both of the kvasim. Even if it's only in one of the two chalas. Alafuka de Reb Meir. And this has nothing to do with the machlokes between Rabbi Yossi and the Rabbanan about the chalas that you're having a machshava about, but rather it has to do with what you were doing at the time that you had the machshavas pigel. And it's not like it's coming to me afuke de Reb Meir, the amma mefagel mechatzi mater. Reb Meir holds you don't have to have a machshava in the whole thing that you're doing. In this case, it's talking about shechting the kvasim. He says even though you need to shecht both of the kvasim in order to be mata the chalis, even having a machshava while you're shechting one of them is enough, which has nothing to do with the discussion in our Mishnah. Our Mishnah was talking about the thing that you're thinking about, whether it spreads into the whole thing, into the entire carbon. Remeir is a question of what do you have to be doing when you have that machshava? Does it have to be the entire matir? Or is it enough? It's just one of the kifsei atzeres. So Remeir said you can be mefagel b'chatzi matir. Kamash malon deloy. Our mission is saying achi yifagel b'shneihen. He has to have a machshava in both of the kvasim. So the Gemara yihachi my la'olam. In the Gemara, if that's the case, the lashon of the brisa was la'olam ein b'kairos achi yifagel b'shneihen. What is the la'olam? It just say ein b'kairos achi yifagel b'shneihen. What is la'olam? La'olam seems to be saying an additional. If you're saying that both you need that it should be a machshavas pigel while he's shechting both of the kvasim, And b'shneyan, he has to have in mind that he's eating both chales chutz lezmani. Rabbi Yossi, and it's saying like Rabbi Yossi, who says that you're not going to be chayiv kares for eating the other challah. Ulafuk de Rameya, and it's coming to say, not like Reb Meir who says mafag mechatzi mata, you could just have in mind one of the kvasim, and Midirabanan who argue on Rabbi Yossi and say that you don't have to have in mind both of the chalas. That's why it's saying la'olam. It's saying not just that you have to have in mind both kvasim, that you have to do it while you're shechting both kvasim, you also have to have in mind both chalas. Eliyam Rabbanan lafuka de Meir, if it's only coming to say like the Rabbanan who hold ein mefaglim b'chatzi mata, now like a mayor, my lo'ilam. What is lo'ilam? We're going to have a series of questions on this. So this is l'chayra a first good question on the shita of Rav Huna, that he says that the shita of Rabbi Yossi in our Mishnah that says both by kivsei atzeres and by lechem aponim, that if you have a machsheves chutz lezmanai on one of the chales or one of the starim, that it's going to, Rabbi Yossi says it's not going to extend to the other one. Rabbanan say it will. And Rav Huna extended that even to the case of where he had in mind by a regular carbon that he's going to eat the basar of one yerach, and he has in mind, and he doesn't have in the other one. Rabbi Yossi will say on that also that it's not going to extend to the other yerach. So we had asked one question there. Now we're going to ask another question on the sheet, on this extension of Rabbi Yossi shita by Rav Huna. Va'oid Amar of Ashi, another question from that which Rav Ashi said. Tashma, he brings this brisa. Rabbi Aimi Mishum Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi says b'shem Rabbi Yossi, Pigel b'dava hanasa b'chutz, pigel. The din is that we know that we've talked about the param hanisrafim, a certain karbanis that you do part of their avodah b'chutz and part of the avodah is b'fnim, right? Like the parkay and Mashiach and the param davashot tzibah, the avodas of Yom Kippur. These are all, they have certain zrikas that are done inside in the heichel, but the shchita and the zrikas dam, there's a zrikas dam that happened, the hakravas emurim, the burning, all happens on outside. So, if you have this is going according to a shita that holds that there's no pigel on avodas that are done b'fnim, that are done in the heichel. So what happens is mefagel b'davar nasa mechutz pigel. But davar nasa b'fnim loy pigel. If he has a machshavas pigel, or he does a ma'isa pigel, or he does the ma'isa with a machshava b'fnim, it's not pigel. Ketza. How will we apply this? Haya oimid b'chutz. If the kohen was standing in the heichel, in the azara, for Amar Hareini Shoichet Almanas Lahazes, he's doing the shchita, which is done b'chutz, and he says, "I'm having in mind to do the hazah midamei l'macher inside, which is done b'fnim, loy pigel." That's not going to be pigel. Shemachshava b'chutz b'davar nasa b'fnim, because he's having a machshava b'chutz, but it's on something that's being done, that's going to be done b'fnim. He's having in mind something being done b'fnim. So therefore, it's not going to be pigel. If he's standing inside the heichel and he says he's about to do, let's say, the zrika, he's being mazah the dam, and he says, "I'm doing it al manas to be makta the emurim the lachutz lezmane the lishbech shirayim lemacher," and he has in mind that he's going to be shayfich the shirayim, the leftover after he does the hazois of the dam, he's going to be shayfich the shirayim. Chutz lezmani, loy pigel. It's not going to be pigel. Shemachshavas v'fnim b'davar nasa b'chutz. That's a machshava v'fnim on something that's done b'chutz. Haya oimed b'chutz. Oimed reini sheichet amas lishbach shirayim l'macher lahakta emurim l'macher pigel. That is going to be pigel. Shemachshava b'chutz b'davar nasa b'chutz. Because that's all b'chutz. So that's a valid machshavas pigel. Fact the Gemara. One of the things we said is he has a machshava lishbech shirayim, to pour out the dam. Livgule mai. What is he coming to be mefagel? Remember again, the whole point of Rav Yossi is that when you're mefagel in one part, or you have a machshava on one thing, it doesn't go on the rest of the carbon. It only goes on the thing that you had a machshava on. So he had a machshava on the shirayim, which is shiurim of the dam. Right? We're not talking about a mincha, the shirayim, which is the flour. We're talking about the shirayim of dam. So what's going to be pigel? Ilay melif gulei dam, if you'll say it's coming to say that if he's going to eat the dam, he's going to get, in addition to the chorus for eating dam. He's also going to get chorus for eating pigel, which obviously is not relevant legabe chorus, but will be relevant legabe chatas. That if he does it b'shoigig, he'll be mechuyev two chatois. But there's a different problem. Dam mi mifkal. Dam cannot become pigel. Vatnan. Elu dvarim she'en chayev alei mishum pigel. These things are not chayev alei mishum pigel. All of these things are things that don't have a matir. There are kaimitz. The kaimitz, nothing is matir the kaimitz. The kaimitz is matir itself. When you separate the kaimitz, it becomes a roy to go on the mizvech. It doesn't have a second, something else being matir. The halavina. The levina also, there's nothing else that's matir the levina. You could bring the levina before you do the kmitza. Vaktiris. The ktiris, there is again, there's no kaimitz at all on a ktiris. So when you maktir it doesn't have a matir. Or minchas kaihanim or minchas nesachim. Minchas kaihanim and minchas nesachim also have no kaimitz. Or minchas kayin mashiach. The mincha of a kayin mashiach, again, it's fully burnt without a kaimitz. Vahadam. Also a dam. Because the dam is a matir other things, but it itself is not, doesn't have a heter. In order for something to have a din pigel, that if you eat it, you're going to be chayiv kares, it has to be something that something else is matir. And dam doesn't have that. So how could we say, according to Rabbi Yossi, that shirayim, that he could have a din pigel on the shirayim? What is getting a din pigel? The dam itself, according to Rabbi Yossi, it's limited only to the thing you had the machshavas pigel on. The dam itself is not capable of becoming pigel to be mechayiv kars. Ela pshita lav gule basa. Elamai, it's coming to be mefagel the basa. Hashtu mahasam doi chosha bebe basa gufay. Amra Yossi mifgol over there. He's having machshav about the dam and was saying the basa is going to become pigel because it's all part of the same animal. Hacha the chosha bebe zevach gufay lekol shekain. Certainly, according to Rabbi Yossi, it must be that if you have a machshava on one limb, it's also going to become pigel on the other limb. So therefore it's shver on Rav Huna. Enachanami, by the chalos, that they're two totally separate entities. Each chala is separate. It won't, according to Rabbi Yossi, one won't affect the other. But it must be not like Rav Huna that two yerachim would pass one another, because we see that dam is going to make the basar pigel. Like Kolshike, the pigel yerachim in pigel yerach smile. V'oid, another question on Rabbi Yossi. Amar Ravina. We had this in the Mishnah earlier. Someone who's kaimitz a mincha and he has a mind to eat the shirayim or to be makta the kaimitz the next day. On that Rabbi Yossi is maida that it's going to be pigel and chayvim of karas. We said, as opposed to the levina, which we said since the levina is a separate thing from the kaimitz, it can't. It's not going to be able to come. That's not going to be a machshavas pigel. What is going to become pigel when he has in mind to be makter the kaimitz lamacha? The kaimitz itself can't become pigel. But like we just quoted before, the kaimitz itself, since it doesn't have anything else being matter, it doesn't become pigel. It must be to be mefagel the rest of the silas, the part that's supposed to be eaten by the kehanim. He wasn't thinking about the shiraim. He was thinking about the kaimitz, mifkali. It's all going to become pigel. The shiraim also going to become hacha. The chashav is zvicha gufa like kol shekain. Certainly, the other yerech will become pigel with the machshava. The yerech yamin will, or the yerech smile will become pigel with the machshava on the yerech yamin. So elam Rav Yochanan. So we're saying it must not be like Rav Huna had said that we treat both Yerachim according to Rabbi Yochanan. According to Rabbi Yossi, we treat the two Yerachim as separate. So the Rabbi Yossi is coming from a different reason. Hainu time with Rabbi Yossi. Hakasav asan good echad, v'hakasav asan shnei gufen. Guf echad ma'akvi adadi, shnei gufen da amar rachmana, halachuda avida. it's going to be relevant. So let's see the Rashi, which says where we see it. Hakasav asan guf echad, hakasav asan beis gufin. This is on the last wide line on the top. Hakasan asan guf echad akli hadadi. The ezuk sheir beloizu. That we're going to say that if you have these two, it's talking about the chalos of the kivsei atzeres and the shtei alechem of the lechem apanim. That if you're not going to have all of both of the chalas, or if you're not going to have all of the lechem apanim, it's not going to be a kosher korban. The chsiv shtayim shnei esrayim the mashra shtayim v'loy achas. That they're separate and they're not one. Uksiv selis tiena v'chol havaya ikuva. V'oiz kosav atzme also shnei gufim midchsiv shtayim the mashra v'chol achas lishosav arichosav b'fnei atzme. They both are brought separate. Hilchach evinu the amar kazayis ben shteim misarvin. They're considered as one in the sense that if you have a kazayis, like we said, it was our original question back on Yud Gimel Amid Beis, that we brought from the Brisa, that if he has a chatzi zayis from each one, it's still going to be considered one, even according to Rabbi Yossi, not like it was mashmin Rav Huna. So in that sense, they're going to be one. But it is going to be separate, that if you have a machshava on one of the two, the other one is not going to be it's not going to also be a chiyuv pigel if you eat it. So we're saying this applies only to the shtei halechem and the lechem apanim in the Mishnah, but it would have no relevance to the case of Rav Huna where he had in mind the yerech yamin and he was eating the yerech smoil. Boy Rav Yochanan. Rav Yochanan asks a question. Now that we've said this chiddush, that we learn from a pasuk that the shtei halechem and the lechem apanim are treated like according to Rabbi Yossi, they're treated as two separate things. That one becomes pigel, the other one he's not going to be chayiv for eating it. What about the lachmei taida? Are they going to be treated the lachmei taida that are brought every day together with the carbon? That are 40 different types of 40 loaves, 10 of each type. So they're different types of loaves, but they're all brought as part of the same hakrava. Are they going to be considered like the two kivsei taida? I'm sorry, not the kivsei taida, the kivsei atzeres, or like the two sedarim of the lechem apanim, according to Rabbi Yossi, that if he eats from one of the groups, it's not going to make the other one pigel, and b'minchas ma'afe. Similarly, according to the Manda Amar, who says that that you could combine, you could bring 10 chalis and half of them will be of one type, 5 will be of one type, and 5 will be the other. Will we say they'll be combined? Will they be treated as one, not like the kivsei atzeres and the lechem apanim? No, they'll be considered just like them. That if you have one in mind, it won't affect the other. He says that the Enochanami, it's going to be the same din. They're going to be treated just like Rabbi Yossi. According to Rabbi Yossi, it's going to be treated the same as the lechem apanim and the kivsei atzeres. Tana Rabban, b'shash chita chishav lechel chatzi zayis, u'b'shash zrikol chishav lechel chatzi zayis. What happened if he had a machshava in two of the different avodas? Right, he didn't have a full machshava to eat a kazayis chutz l'zmanoi, but he did a chatzi zayis by the shchita, and then the other chatzi zayis of machshavas pigel by the zurika. So there, pigel nesha shchita v'zurika mitztarfen. It's going to be pigel because the shchita and the zurika are closely related, right? When you shecht it, it makes the dam, it brings out the dam, and then that dam that's going to be mitzvah. Ikeda Amri, Shchita v'zrika t'tarayu matirin in. By the Shchita, which makes the dam available to be thrown. And the Zrika, which is matir everything else. It's matir the emurim, to be burnt on the mizbech. It's matir the basa, to be eaten by the kehanim or the owners. So they can combine with a chatzi zayis of a machshavas pigel on each one of them. But Kabbalah v'aylocha loy. One says that the Kabbalah Elocha, if you have a machshav of Chatzi Zayis, Chutz L'Zmane on those two, that's not going to be combined because they're not matir together. Vikadami Hanach the Merachim, the Merachim, if by the Zrika and the Shchita, which are at the two opposite ends, you first do the Shchita and then you do the Kabbalah Elocha and then you finally do the Zrika, if they can combine, and certainly Kabbalah Elocha, which are next to each other, they can be combined. Is it true you combine any avodas together? If you have a machshavas chatzi zayis in one and machshavas chatzi zayis in another, Abba avodas aim mitzdarf in lepigel. The four avodas are not mitzdarf in lepigel. Shchitu zrika kabbalah v'yalacha. You can't be mitzdarf any of the avodas together. Amaroah olei kasha har Rebbe har Rabbanan. Depends on whether you're talking about according to the Rebbe or the Rabbanan. The Tanya sheikh is a kevesh lechal chatzi zayis michalazu. Rebbe kosher. Rebbe says that this is going to be kosher. It's going to be, we're going to disregard. Rebbe is the man d'Amar who says if you have a machshava and different avodas, they're not mitzdarf, right? He had in mind to eat one of the kvasim, when he's doing one of the kvasim, which is similar to two separate avodas, and then he did by a second keves, to eat another chatzi zayis. So Rebbe is going to be the Ma'anamer who says that each one of the avodas cannot be mitzdarf with another avodah. Rebbe's case is different. He's talking about with his two kvasim, and he's only eating chatzi zayis. So there's two sides. He's first of all he's having the machshava about the machshavas, the chatzi zayis of pigel, on two separate kvasim, which each one is only a chatzi matir. Neither one of them is by itself an avodah that's sufficient to be matir. Masha enkein zrika, shchita is matir the dam fully, and zrika is matir the emurim and the basar fully. So Emed Shamalei Rabbi chatzi matir v'chatzi achila, kula matir v'chatzi achila mishamalei. Did he say, well, you're doing the whole matir like the zrika and the shchita? He never said this. He says, no, I have a different raya. If Rebbe would hold that where it is a kule matir, like our case, and chatzi achila, that if he's going to hold that in that case, it's going to be a machshava to make a pigel. Ligzer chatzi matir v'chatzi achila, to kule matir v'chatzi achila. He should make a gzeir on it. And Rebbe said it's kosher. He didn't say that it's possible the aim bakaros. He said it's fully kosher. How could he not make a gzera? The Rabbi Yossi gaz of Rabbanan gaz. We know that there's such a thing that with geyser that you should at least be possible. Rabbi Yossi gaz that tanan lahakta levaynasa lamach. Rabbi Yossi aimer possible aim bakaros. We said again, this is the Mishnah on Daf Yud Gimel. We said Rabbi Yossi said that if he has in mind to be makdil levayna, since it's separate, levayna is separate from the kaimitz, so therefore it's not going to be pigel, but he says it's puzzle. He doesn't say it's kosher. He says puzzle vein bekaris. So he makes it there. And the Chacham disagree. They said pigel v'chayv l'karis, which is not relevant. Rabbanan nami gazi. Where do we see that the Rabbanan are guys? Is it's non pigel b'kaimitz v'loy b'levayna. If he has a machshavas pigel by the kaimitz, not b'levayna, or by levayna v'loy b'kaimitz. Remeya oimer pigel v'chayv l'karis. Remeya says mafagim b'chatzi matir, and therefore it's going to be pigel v'chayv l'karis. Chacham disagree. They say there's no karis until shifagel b'chol matir. But it's just saying aim b'karis. It's not saying that it's not possible. They're agreeing that it's possible because they're making a gzera. So why wouldn't Rabbi Yossi make a similar gzera here? Is it Rebbe? I'm sorry, Rebbe. Rebbe should make a gzera here. If you're saying that it's Rebbe is the man d'Amar. Amalei hachi hashta bishlam hasam gazer Rabbi Yossi kaimitz levayna atu kaimitz the minchas the mincha. It's that's not a taina. Rabbi Yossi is chayshish that if you're going to allow people, if it's to be kosher when you have a machshava on the levayna, that they'll also think that it's going to be kosher when you have a machshava on the mincha, the kaimitz, and the kaimitz itself is a full matir that it could, if you have a machshava to do the kaimitz, the kmitza, that doesn't need any levayna with it, so that's going to certainly be pigel. Rabbanan gazi kaimitz atu kaimitz the minchas chayta ulevayna atu ulevayna abab bazich. And even though um, the Rabbanan hold a mefaglim b'chatzi mater, but there's the minchas chayta, which doesn't need a levina, so therefore the kaimitz is not a chatzi mater, and the levina, you have sometimes a levina without a kaimitz when you have the levina that baba bazichin by the lechem apanim, where there's no kaimitz on that, and that's mater the lechem apanim all by itself. So you have to be geyser in that case. You won't realize that's why the Rabbanim will geyser. And also, kvasim nami, keves atu keves chaveret. Keves will geyser because maybe he'll also have in mind the other keves. Bazach atu bezach chaveret, and legabe the bezichin, we're worried about the other bezach. Alahacha mika chatzi mate v'chatzi achila ba'alma delekim v'ligzer. In our case, where he's having on the shnei kvasim, he's only having one of the kvasim, and he's only having a mind of a chatzi zayis. So there's nothing that's similar to it that we have to worry about to make gzera, the lake of Ligzer. And this is l'chayra correct. The time of the Rabbanim Misham Hachi. This is the reason why they were geyser. The Tani Sefer Moed Mecham L'Ramei BeMinchas Chayta Minchas Kenois Shebhigel B'Kaimet Shebhigel B'Chayim Lav Karas. The Moed by Minchas Chayta and Minchas Kenois that if he has a machshavas pigel in the kaimitz that is going to be pigel B'Chayim Lav Karas, as opposed to a regular mincha that also has levina, and therefore it's only a chatzi mata. Shaykoimitzu amata. Halami lemisnik. Klar, what do you have to say that pshita? If it's a kule mata, Rabbanu was saying that you're not ema fagin b'chatzi mata, but that's a kule mata. What do you have to tell me about a kule mata? That it's a bigel. Mika meta mata achrina. Elalava komashmon. The time of the kaimitz mishum the ikka kaimitz the minchas chayte did damile. The reason why by a kaimitz, for why the Rabbanan are geyser by the kaimitz, why they're saying that it's going to be puzzle, is because they're being geyser over there. But it's not. It's only because there is a potential, as opposed to the by Rebbe, that there is no potential, since it's both a chatzi mater as well as a chatzi pigel. He's having machshava only part of the pigel. Okay, we're going to stop over here.